The U.S. Federal Reserve has ended 2024 with another interest rate cut, their third and the final one of 2024. It's also the final rate cut of the Biden administration. The Fed making the announcement earlier on Wednesday. Now, for more on the impact of today's interest rate cut, we're joined by Sean Stein Smith. He is associate professor at Lehman College, City University of New York. Sean, good to see you again.
Absolutely, Sean. Happy to be here.
You know, when they made the cut that everybody anticipated, my general reaction was going to be, okay, the market is probably going to be flat. But I don't think anybody saw the information. The prediction was right about the cut, but man, not about the Fed's information moving forward, and the markets just tanked on that information. What's your reaction to this?
So the current rate that was baked in pricing, but the real headline here today is the 2025 forecast. And it was really interesting to me, Sean, that in the Fed minutes, in their documentation, they are basically saying their 2% goal for inflation is now going all the way out until the end of 2027. So ultimately, rates are going to be higher for much longer versus what pretty much anybody else thought. So that's the real takeaway here today.
Okay, so fewer interest rates expected next year. So what does it say about the state of the U.S. economy?
So on the one hand, right, there are going to be fewer cuts because the job market has cooled off to a healthy level. Individual retail spending is strong, and overall corporate profits have held up. But on the other hand, only having two cuts, possibly only one, does sort of tell me that rates, again, that inflation level is going to be higher for longer, right? And so that is going to ultimately crimp corporate profits and also hurt the individual consumers out there in terms of higher rates on mortgages, credit cards, and auto loans. So it's a optimistic look forward, but a cautious one.
Yeah, if you look at what the Fed did this year, lowering by a full percentage point, it's just not translating right now into lower mortgage rates and into lower rates on credit cards. Why not?
Well, the important point there, Sean, is that yes, the Fed has cut rates by a full point, but all of that is after 3.5, 4 years of the highest inflation in the U.S. in decades. And so all of that is going to take time to work itself out. And two, right now, the policy implications of the incoming Trump White House aren't baked in, and they aren't really known yet either.
Right. Okay, let's talk about this incoming Trump administration and the actions that is going to be on the Fed's radar going into 2025. What are the biggest factors the Fed will be watching? And you have to bake into that, if you will, the fact that Donald Trump has indicated he's going to be a hands-on president.
Well, I would say there that Trump is always hands-on in every aspect. As somebody who has a background in commercial real estate, his preference is always going to be for the lowest rate possible. But on the actual policy side, I would really say it's all tariffs, other trade measures, and then actually how active Trump and his team are in trying to influence the Fed outside of the usual talking comments.
Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this trying to influence, because it's always been the president keeps hands off and lets the Fed do its job. So do you expect a transformation from Fed and Jerome Powell under the Trump administration? Powell has 2 years left on his term, and he has made it crystal clear he's not leaving. He's going to ride it out no matter what.
I don't think so, Sean, right? Because don't forget, Powell was originally put into office by Trump. And, Trump does tend to highlight the optics, highlight his off-the-cuff comments, and then ultimately come back more to the table. And ultimately, his team and his campaign really ran on higher inflation and higher prices. And ultimately, he is going to be corralled by people on his team that want prices to be lower over time, as opposed to having lower rates, possibly causing higher inflation on his watch.
Okay, this time he's surrounding himself with yes people. We'll just have to wait to see how that plays out. But the Fed is projecting that inflation will go up again in 2025. How much of a concern is that, especially since, as you just talked about, many Americans voted on the economy and they're banking on prices going down?
It is absolutely a top concern, and it should be the top priority the Trump White House. Now, in terms of how his team can actually fight that, I would say that ultimately the best course of action is to have the Fed operate independently, keep rates higher for longer, and that will ultimately cure higher rates.
Okay, 6 to 8 months from now, I want to have you back on the program. Let's revisit exactly what we talked about today. Always a pleasure. Sean Stein Smith, thank you so much.